following me academy once again. This is going to be a response to Raoul and his video. Okay, the Bible isn't scientific, maybe it's historical. Part 2. Now, for those who are unaware, he responded in a couple of comments on my last video in saying that he looks forward to this. So, here you go, Raoul. I hope this enjoys you. By the way, Raoul, this is just for future reference. It's never a good idea to put conditions on when you want to discuss with people, because it will make you look a teensy bit dishonest. You shouldn't make conditions for discussing with people, even if you hate the person that they're associated with or they're discussing with. You have no right to decide that, because again, we all have our pet hates, our people we rather do not like. But however, I think it's wrong to demand of somebody that they block somebody just so they can have a conversation with you. Okay, so we've got Raoul's second book, Textual Criticism. Well, I'll put Textual Criticism like that of the Book of Acts. Now, Raoul doesn't understand how textual criticism works, and this is not an attack. This is just a statement of fact. Raoul, you don't understand how textual criticism actually works. You do not cross-examine it. You don't compare something from, let's say, for example, in the Roman world to something written in the Middle East. You have different words where you have somebody who's using a second language. You're using somebody who comes from a different educational background, somebody who comes from a different ethnic background. So you're not really using textual criticism as it really should be used. And this is not mental gymnastics or some sort of thing, theist apologetics. This is simply understanding textual criticism. That you have to examine it. Does it represent a document from the Near Middle East? And you can't compare it to a document made in the Mediterranean, for example. They are two different parts of the world, and they're produced by two different people at two different times, in two different environments, which means that you don't understand where Acts comes from. And again, this is not an attack on you, Raoul. This is an attack on your understanding of textual criticism, and textual criticism has to be understood from the area. Now, does the document reflect Near Middle Eastern literature? Yes, it does. Does it represent Near Middle Eastern understanding of history at the time? Yes, it does. So that is what you have to examine it from. You can't examine it by saying, well, it doesn't follow the patterns of something, let's say, written in Mesoamerica, because that's going to have a different writing style. It's going to be written in the first language, not the second one. It's going to be, there are things in it that's a. Now, the only way you would be right is if it was written by a Roman citizen. It wasn't. It was written by a Jew who had to learn Roman, Latin and Greek. Kind of Greek, actually, because he was never written in Latin. He was written in Greek. So, you're saying that because Peter was not really educated, therefore he couldn't have understood Latin is rubbish, because, as anybody who has a brain will know, Israel at the time was a occupied territory of Rome. And what language did the Romans speak? Latin, and also Greek. It didn't matter how educated you were. You were forced to learn it, otherwise you were seen to be against the state. It's like, for example, when the UK took over, when Great Britain took over India, the Indians didn't know how to speak English, but the English well taught them, and if they didn't speak English, well, you know what happened then. Bang. And the same thing happened there. It was sawed through the gullet if you didn't speak Greek, because you were seen as somebody who's trying to play, doing that basically to Rome. So your point doesn't really stand the test of history. No, because that's what you say, it isn't history. When you, again, if you don't understand how history actually works, you're not going to really make that point. Secondly, the invocation of the supernatural is going to happen in a holy text. It just is going to be there because the holy texts are going to deal with strange miraculous events happening. It is a part of a holy book. Now, whether these things actually happened are a matter of perspective. I mean, I personally think they didn't happen, but again, incredulity doesn't mean they didn't happen. Saying, oh, well, it's not been proved, therefore it's not historical, is not an argument, it's a circular argument. It is having a supernatural event, therefore, supernatural events don't happen, therefore it's not historical. It's a circular argument. And an argument for incredulity doesn't work. It's a logical fallacy. Now, is the Book of Acts historical? Should it be in the Bible? I would argue yes, because it's a more impartial account than Paul's writings. Now, there are things in Acts that don't really jive up with what Paul's saying, but scholars have actually said that it's more impartial than Acts. There actually are scholars who say that it shouldn't be included in the Bible at all. I would disagree with them, as I think Acts gives another dimension to the perspective of Paul, a non-Jewish perspective. And to your claims that the ancient Jews and the ancient Gentiles were at war or anything like that is wrong. That did not happen until 4th century. That split, and it wasn't just between the Gentiles and Jews. Some of the Jews were actually with the Gentiles, in which some of them actually believed what they were saying. Some Jews didn't, and they became like what we would consider the Orthodox Jews, the Hasidic Jews. So saying it was just between the Gentiles and Jews is very stupid and very narrow-minded. Now, I'd like you to tell me, you keep on saying it's fiction, but you never presented any sort of backup for this evidence. You never provided any sort of textual criticism written by any sort of scholar. The nearest you've come is Robert Price, who I said, and I will say again, is not a legitimate scholar. He's a pseudo-scholar. He'd be like me bringing up Ray Comfort in reference to biology, or Kent Hovind in relation to biology, or, whoever. Name your pseudo-scholar of choice. Because he is not academically published. He has to go to some free thought blog thing and has to be produced there. And that's where he's a professor as well. This free thought thing. There is no academic rigor. There is no peer review. There is no academic process to his work. And that was my point. Again, you shouldn't take everything I say to you as an attack. I'm trying to educate you, Raoul, because there are people out there, Christians out on this website, who know a lot more than me and who would be a lot more, should we say, ruder than I'm currently being. I'm being polite with you, Raoul, because I do think that there is a sentience of rationality in there somewhere. Deep within that dull blackened hole you call a brain, there is some slight of rationality that is struggling to get out. And I'm trying to reach that part, Raoul, because this is not nothing to do with you're a Christian and atheist, because again, there are Christian and atheist biblical scholars, and they disagree all the time. Okay, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing about the text of the Bible. But when you're going to do it, at least read something on it, so you can present an actual legitimate case, not to say, oh, it's fiction because I think it's fiction. It doesn't work that way. I've taken one book of the Bible, the account of Acts, is wrong. I mean, for God's sake, do you really think that this is... that is basically it. You need to understand there is a difference between... So, because again, you said that, oh well, Peter could be saying this and it was repeated and blah, 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 blah. People tend to repeat stuff from each other because that's the way it works. Because people would repeat a message. Because they weren't speaking their own words. They were speaking the words of somebody else. They were speaking the words of Jesus. That's who they were repeating. They weren't repeating themselves. They're basically quoting Jesus. God's sake, man. So Raoul, I mean, on the Book of Acts, please read some textual criticism of it. And I'm not reading by John Robert Price or a Torres or, you know, any of these other imbeciles. Read something by an actual legitimate scholar like, I don't know, Bart Ehrman. Read Bart Ehrman. Read Michael. Even write Michael Kruger. Michael Kruger's a legitimate doctor of fucking New Testament scholarship. Read N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright would just... I'll tell you what, Raoul. I'll recommend you a book written by somebody who's a lot more intelligent than you are. Read this book. Read this book. Because it tells you how to do textual variants, it tells you about textual criticism, it tells you about historical criticism. It's actually a pretty good book written by somebody who's a lot more smarter than you are, and a lot smarter than I am. I mean, if you want an argument for authority, he goes, this guy used to be the ex-bishop of Durham, so, you know, you don't get any more authoritative than that. I mean, I tell you what, go to this book and read number 25 on the introduction. And also read number 32. So if you read pages 25 and 32, you should be understanding why you should do, or even 61 as well. Actually, just read the entire introduction of this book. I mean, if you want me to read it to you, I'd be happy to do so. This is how you do New Testament. This is the sort of length of the book you need to be doing. And this is a volume 1 of 3. This was written by a legitimate textual scholar. Let me see if this talks about Acts in this. I think it does somewhere. I mean, you got to be kidding me with this shit. You really do. But yeah, read this. Read any books on Acts. Read N.T. Wright's book on Acts. It's a lot more educated than this. Oh, dearly me. I mean, so Raoul, I want to ask you this question. Can you present me with anything rational to defeat Acts? Not just incredulity, not just, I don't believe it, not just, you know, well, this person doesn't look smart enough to be saying this. An actual argument based upon actual evidence. I await the response, but something tells me I'm not going to get it. This is 5 minutes, 4 G's making true out.